Here is our wooden heart. I'm starting out with some Mud Puddle by Dixie Belle. I have it watered down, and I'm also using a mister bottle as I go to keep it nice and wet because I'm going for a stained look. I want the background to have a stained look. And then I'm going to use a old sock to kind of wipe that back because we don't want it to be soaked in water. We're going to go around the edges and do the same thing. Make sure that you're using water. See how it's darker? So you want to kind of spritz some water on it with a mister bottle or just like a light spray bottle and kind of wipe it back and paint it to give it kind of a stained look. Now later on I do decide to paint the edges in buttercream, so that will change. So you can paint that before you start painting or after. I also am going to paint the back the same way. We're just kind of going to give it a light stained look. You can put the paint on there whatever direction you want and then wipe it back in one direction, as you can see with the sock. I like to go with the grain of the wood. You don't have to. Then make sure it's nice and dry. And I decided that I wanted the grooves to be a little bit darker, so I went in with a little bit thicker paint, not as thin down. And then I'm going to wipe it back with the sock, kind of give it a nice even look. You don't want there to look like there's lines there because it will make the paint, when you paint it on there, look different colors, and you don't want that. And then we're going to use the buttercream. Make sure that you're painting out towards the edges and not from the edges because it will drip over and you don't necessarily want that. Go very slowly on the edges. I had to spritz it with some water there because it was starting to dry. But you want to go really slow where the grooves are, where the next color is going to go. That way the paint does not go down in the cracks. You could also use a foam brush if you wanted to for this. Instead, I just use the paintbrush. It doesn't really matter which one you use. You just have to, I guess it depends on your patience level. This is soft pink that I'm putting in the middle. I put on 2 coats of this and then I changed my mind. So you'll see that here in a minute that I changed my mind. That is sandbar that I'm putting on the thin line there. And I did like how that looked. I only had to do 1 coat of it because there was already a brown behind it and I liked how it looked. Make sure it's dry and then you can do a second coat if you want to. You don't have to. It all depends on the look. And then we're doing a second coat of the buttercream. Again, just make sure that you're painting out towards the edges. When you paint towards the edges, you can paint in whatever direction you want, but then when you go back, go over it lightly. Make sure it's dry before you start sanding. But when you're painting, you do want to smooth it over, make sure that the paint is going in one direction. So here's the tea rose where I changed my mind. I like how this looks better. It just kind of goes with the colors better. The light pink was just too light. And then now I'm going around the edges, like I said earlier, with the buttercream. I like how that looks. And you might get it up on the top. As long as it's dry, you can kind of wipe it back with your fingers. And then if you get it around the back on the edges, just again, make sure you're wiping it kind of with the brush or with your finger to smooth it out. And then I'm just smoothing out the top. I'm doing another layer of the buttercream just to make sure it looks all one color. I'm doing a second coat of the tea rose here. And then once the front was dry, I flipped it over to the back and I'm just kind of painting in crazy directions here, you can see, but I go back over it and kind of smooth it in one direction. And you don't go over it with a heavy hand, you go over it with a light hand. Let it dry, sand, brush off any excess sawdust, well, paint dust, I guess it would be. And then do the same process. After this, you let it dry. And then you can sand it if you want. You don't have to. I like the sanded look. And then it's all done. There will be a stencil included that you can add to it if you got the kit. If not, you don't have to.